Hi, I'm author Kristie Lynn Higgins, and welcome to my Free Stories project. You can help out with this project by purchasing the ebook I'll be reading shortly. You can buy the ebook from Amazon, Google, Apple, Kobo, or Barnes& and Noble, and you can also buy merchandise related to the story from Redbubble. You can find links to the ebooks to your favorite store and a link to the merchandise page in the description. I would love to hear from you about the story or how I can improve future videos. I have created a special YouTube channel that will be for my novel and story announcements, including when the next free story project will be released. A link is in the description, and there should be a tab in the screen somewhere so that you can subscribe to my author Kristie Lynn Higgins YouTube channel. This video is sponsored by Shades of Grey, an apocalyptic science fiction series, and Monster of Monsters, a sci-fi horror. You can read and or listen to the first two stories of both these series for free. There's a link in the description and one in the upper right-hand corner. Oceanus Revenge by Kristie Lynn Higgins. Copyright 2023. Cover created by Chimera. Copyright 2023. Chapter 1. Three Sisters. It was late November in the warm Caribbean as three sister ships of the Lurks cruise line left the port. They were on day 5 of their transatlantic trip to the Mediterranean from Florida. They had spent a couple of days at two Caribbean ports and were on the second sea day. Two widows, living up their golden years, strolled deck 12 at the quietest dawn after leaving the steakhouse at 7:59 p.m. Clouds filled the dark sky, preventing the moon from shining down on the sea. An easterly wind was hitting the side they walked, so they kept to the other side of the walkway. They strolled by a poster, and Myrtle questioned, "Isn't that sign promoting your nephew's business?" Barb sighed as she replied, "Yes, he's in his early 30s, and this is already his 10th business venture." "He's still looking for himself," Myrtle stated. "No, he's just an idiot, an honest-to-God idiot. If some stranger on YouTube or Facebook talks about some new business, he has to jump headlong into it." "I see it as enthusiasm." "I see it as stupidity," Bob countered. "It would be different if it was his money he was wasting, but it's his parents' money." Myrtle inquired, "Are his parents upset with him?" "They see it as paying him to stay away from them." "That's a shame. I like your nephew. He's such a nice young man." The two of them greeted a few people who walked by as they continued their stroll through the pleasant air. The sound of the ocean and the ship's engine persisted as a background hum. "My environment club will be cleaning up the beach down from my house in 5 weeks. You should come and join us," Barb said. "After that, we will be going into the city to sit on the steps of the courthouse to protest Big Oil." "All in the same day?" Myrtle spoke. "Your club gets around." "My other environmental club is the one protesting Big Oil," Bob corrected her. "I didn't know you had joined another group." "I did after our last cruise," Barb stated. "Between the two big monsters, plastic and oil, polluting our oceans, we got our work cut out for us. If we get rid of natural gas and oil, I can't see how the United States can completely convert to clean energy in only a decade," Myrtle stated. "Everything's so expensive, from EVs to solar roofs, and I've heard our electrical grid is nowhere near producing what our needs will be if we completely get rid of oil, coal, and natural gas. It's like we're doing things backward or not thinking it all the way through from start to finish. We're wasting a lot of money this way. Maybe the US should tackle the foundation before working on the walls." "I have no idea what you're trying to say. Are you building a house?" "No," Myrtle laughed. "I was only saying the US is nowhere near—" "Near what?" Barb asked when her friend didn't finish. Myrtle seemed distracted, and then she questioned, "What were you saying?" "You were the one saying something," Barb replied. "Did you have a brain fart?" "No. I thought I heard something, her friend replied as she squinted as if trying to focus on something in the distance. If you heard something, why are you squinting? Barb inquired as she glanced behind herself. Myrtle motioned across the dark ocean and questioned, Do you see the lights over there? Barb went over to the railing and looked where her friend pointed, and then she replied, I think I do. It's probably one of the sisters. They're sailing together on their maiden voyage. Did you read up on them? Or did you ignore all the emails I sent you about this cruise? I didn't have a lot of time between helping my neighbor with her kids while she looked for a job, Myrtle told her after joining her at the railing. You should let her family help her, Barb stated. And even if you helped her, what would it matter? There are thousands of women out there who are sole providers for their families. You should donate to one of those organizations that help them and not worry about one woman. You ever heard the story about the girl and the starfishes? I have, Barb replied. What about it? Let me try a different approach to the subject, Myrtle spoke. What if you picked up one plastic bottle from a beach littered with them? The beach will still be littered, Barb replied. What would picking up one bottle do? Myrtle shook her head, but said nothing more about it, and then she leaned a little toward the railing and said, There it is again. I think I hear screaming. She squinted again and asked, Aren't those lights flickering in the distance? Like the low-hanging light bulb in my basement that flickers when I forget about it and hit my head on it? Barb answered, I can't see that far. I'm not even sure if it is one of the sister ships. It's more of a blur of tiny lights. Here's one of the officers walking this way. Let me ask him. Myrtle walked over to the man and then motioned in the distance, but by the time she did, there were no lights. Chapter 2. The next morning. Barb and Myrtle had their swimsuits on as they made their way to the pool for an early morning swim. Our next cruise will be to Alaska. I already picked out a few excursions for us, Barb told her friend. We can learn about how climate change is affecting polar bears. Did you know the Arctic is warming twice as fast as the global average? It's causing the ice that those so cute polar bears depend on to melt away. As long as we aren't feeding them in the wild, cute or not, I don't want to become a meal for them. Barb laughed. I wouldn't mind going on a whale spotting tour, Myrtle stated, as she glanced at a few of the crew who were frantically talking in lowered voices near the breakfast bar. Killer whales are such majestic creatures. The crew stopped when one of the officers cleared her throat as she walked by. I could add the excursion where we learn about how whaling has brought many species of whales to near extinction. Does the excursion include a chance at seeing one of the whales? Myrtle asked. I enjoy nature up close and at a safe distance, not so much lectures about them. You didn't listen to the part of near extinction, did you? Barb questioned. You're more distracted than normal. Have you noticed how strange the crew is acting? I sense an air of apprehension. Barb walked over to a lounge chair that was near a group of 3 crew and sat and rummaged through her beach bag as she listened in on their conversation. After a few minutes, Barb stood and rejoined her friend. You were right. It seems they lost contact with Nereseg's Sunset, one of their sister ships last night, and it's still missing. Missing? Myrtle uttered, and then she calmed herself and spoke. You don't think we saw— I do, Barb interrupted. The Coast Guard has started searching for the Nereseg's Sunset. I also heard that they did have radio contact with her, but it was static-filled. Later that night. Let's go dancing, Barb suggested as they left the buffet. They were still dressed in their shorts and t-shirt as they had gone on an excursion earlier and had a blast on the zip lines. The lounge has a group singing Motown favorites in about 2 hours. Sounds fun, Myrtle said. It'll only take me an hour to get ready. What do you want to do until then? I told my nephew Edward that we would stop by the room he will be having the bath bomb party in, Barb replied. He wants our opinion on the layout of the products. Sounds fun. I did always like your nephew. You have said so, but you also like hopeless causes. Barb, you're terrible. You make it sound like you see Edward as one of your projects. Not in the least. I want to help my causes, and with Edward, well, I wish I could have paid him to be on some other ship." The two of them walked by one of the doors that went out to the deck, and Myrtle asked, "Isn't that Ricky's Twilight? I hear she is the largest of the three sisters. Let's go take a look at her. She isn't that far away." They walked out on deck 12 and walked over to the railing. The sky above them was overcast once again. Ricky's Twilight was less than a mile away. "I didn't know they sailed this close together," Barb commented. "They normally don't," Myrtle stated. "It isn't safe on the open ocean." She unslung her backpack and took out her binoculars. "Look, I packed these in case something exciting happens again." "Exciting?" Barb repeated, and then she inquired, "Do you call a missing cruise ship exciting?" "No, that's horrible. But the mystery behind the why, I call that exciting," she replied as she placed the strap of the M19s over her neck, lifted them, and peered through the eyepieces. "That's funny." "What is?" "I see a lot of orange all over the decks. I can sort of make out the orange of the lifeboats, but there are hundreds of smaller orange shapes frantically moving about a few of the decks." A man and a woman walking by stopped when they also noticed the lights on the dark horizon. "Do you hear anything like last night?" Barb questioned. Myrtle strained to listen and then answered, "I don't." She continued to peer through the lenses when the clouds above their sister ship parted and the full moon shone down on the Ricky's Twilight. "I can make out the smaller orange shapes now. There. Wait a moment. I see something odd." Myrtle leaned over the railing as if it would help her get a better look. "I don't believe it. I think I see a a what?" Barb questioned. "A arm," Myrtle blurted. Two men who were walking by also stopped and looked at where the four of them seemed to be looking. Barb corrected her friend. "It would be an arm. For Pete's sake, sometimes I wonder if you've ever finished high school." "Now's not the time. I'm serious. A long, shadowy arm is rising from the ocean, has wrapped itself around the ship." "Let me see." Barb spoke as she grabbed the binoculars from her friend's hands and looked. "Barb!" Myrtle gagged out. "Barb, you're choking me." "Oh, sorry," she stated, and then helped her friend remove the strap from around her neck. Barb peered through the eyepieces and exclaimed, "Holy moly, you're right. I see another arm rising. No, one, two, three, seven more." The lights of the sister ship started to flicker rapidly. "Myrtle, it's dragging Ricky's Twilight into the ocean. Myrtle, it's—" "Turn around. Don't look any more," her friend told her as she forced her to face away. Barb started to sob. Myrtle grabbed her by the hand and dragged her away from the railing. "Come on. We need to find a member of the crew." Later that night, the Quistis Dawn sailed over to the last known location of the Ricky's Twilight. All they found was 3 life jackets and 1 empty lifeboat. Myrtle and Barb went out on their room's balcony and watched as the crew continued their search. A Coast Guard ship joined them, and then about an hour later, a second Coast Guard ship also joined, along with a few nearby ships and boats. The sun proclaimed dawn with a dreary red hue as the search continued with 4 more ships. Myrtle and Barb had stayed up through the night. Barb was too afraid and upset to sleep, and her friend wouldn't let her worry alone. Myrtle tried to put the binoculars away, but her friend wouldn't have it. Barb looked through the M19 and said, "Look there. I see a large oil spill, but it's bright yellow. Let me see." Myrtle looked and saw the not-so-oil spill that was neon yellow in color and seemed to have bits and pieces of plastic glitter mixed in it. "It looks exactly like a mini version of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch that I've seen pictures of. My environmental club hasn't tackled that problem yet. We would need 100 clubs to join us before we could tackle the Great Pacific Garbage Patch." Myrtle could tell by her friend's voice that she was nowhere near being fine with what they saw last night and were witnessing today. A few hours later, the captain spoke over the intercom system. "In lieu of recent events, I have decided to turn the ship around and head for the nearest port. We will be there sometime tomorrow." One of the Coast Guard ships will be escorting us while the remaining ships continue their rescue efforts. Let us take a few moments of silence to pray for our sister ships." Both women bowed their heads. Chapter 3. A Party to Distract. Myrtle tried to keep Barb busy the rest of the day so she wouldn't be so worried, and Barb did her best to hide her apprehensions from her friend. Myrtle was also afraid. The novelty of the mystery was far from her mind. Evening approached, and the women dressed up for Edward's bath bomb party. They made their way back up to Deck 12. "Did you hear?" Myrtle asked her friend. "Edward has decided to donate a portion of the proceeds from his company to sponsor your club activities so that you can continue to help the environment." "Isn't he a sweet boy? A sweet idiot of a boy?" Myrtle shook her head as she tried not to laugh. Myrtle's heart was warmed by her nephew's sentiment. They assisted him in setting up the room, which had enough for the 200 people who reserved a spot. The night would be filled with games and prizes. He brought on board over 4,000 of the baseball-sized bath bombs, 10 dozen gift baskets, and other merchandise other than his samples. The cruise line paid him a nice fee to have the party 4 times during the trip. Edward, with 3 of his employees, set up a fourth of their supply within the room to sell, and also had enough samples for every attendee to have one golf ball size sample of his 6 cents. Edward explained how his product had less waste as the bath bombs were sealed in a special packaging that dissolved when it touched the water, how it was good for septic-based homes as there was a patent-pending enzyme that not only softened and refreshed the skin, but when drained from the bathtub, it dissolved oil and gunk in the pipes and fed the healthy parts of their septic system. The party went on, and the games and prizes seemed to go over well. But after Edward opened up for orders, no one was interested. Barb felt sorry for her nephew, who was greatly disappointed. Myrtle couldn't stand that no one was buying anything, so she rose and said, "Edward forgot to mention that he just started this venture and that he will be donating a portion to help the environment." The people still didn't seem interested. "Let me tell you a story," Myrtle spoke. "A man was walking along the shore when he saw a girl throwing something. When he got closer, he saw that she was picking up washed-up sea stars and throwing them into the ocean. He looked all around and told the girl, 'There are so many. What does it matter if you throw a few back in?' 'It matters to the sea star,' she told him, and then went on throwing more in." Myrtle paused as she looked across the audience, and then she said, "One matters, and each one matters. Let's help this young man get started with his new business." She spoke as she opened her purse and removed her wallet. "Edward, I'll take one of your bath bombs." One by one, people in the room raised their hand as they also committed to buying one bath bomb, until over 40% of the room was buying a scented ball. Edward and his employees busied themselves taking orders. Barb and Myrtle walked outside along the railing as the sun waned and a still quiet abound. They noticed the Coast Guard ship some distance beside them. "Thank you," Barb said. "I appreciate what you did for my nephew." Myrtle sniffed the bath bomb and commented, "This smells really nice." Barb smelled hers and said, "It does." What was this scent? An unearthly screech burbled from the deep as a shadowy arm, or more like a massive tentacle, lifted from the dark ocean, some distance from the Quaes's dawn. Both women screamed as the tentacle wrapped itself around the smaller vessel. A whirlpool formed and sucked the Coast Guard ship down. Men and women aboard cried out as the tentacle crushed the vessel. The Coast Guard ship and the crew were swallowed by the whirlpool before its demise, and nothing remained but disturbed sea. Barb and Myrtle screamed even louder, and many who attended the bath bomb party came out on deck. A small pool of inky neon yellow formed on the surface, filled with bits and pieces of different colored plastic. It glowed under the moonlight. The ship rocked from the disturbance caused by the whirlpool and tossed everyone back. Myrtle grabbed the railing and at the same time dropped her bath bomb and grabbed Barb's hand before she fell and helped steady her on her feet. A few in the crowd fell, and people were helping them up. Edward ran out and asked, "Aunt Barbara, are you all right?" "I'm The hair-curling screech burbled to the surface again as three tentacles shot out of the water like harpoons. They wrapped around the Quintessa's Dawn and squeezed the ship, and the Quintessa's Dawn groaned as the tentacles bore down on her. The ship started to slowly turn, and Myrtle looked over the railing and saw that a maelstrom was forming. The ship's lights flickered. Two more tentacles rose from the depths and wrapped around the ship, and the Quintessa's Dawn groaned even more as the monster bore down on it. A large, mutated head appeared, with three neon red eyes glaring at them. It was a humongous giant squid, made up of a kaleidoscope of plastic glitter, as if it was a see-through, rainbow-colored, oily, jelly-filled donut. "Myrtle, what do we do?" Barb yelled as she was able to grab the railing. "I don't want to die." The bath bomb Myrtle had dropped rolled back and forth on the deck until it rolled off and plummeted into the ocean. As soon as it hit the water, the bath bomb started to fizz and release its soothing scents and oils. The sea monster let out a slight squeal. "Barb, throw your bath bomb in the ocean." "I don't think the monster wants to take a fizzy bubble bath." "I don't think it likes it," Myrtle yelled, as they started to spin faster and faster. "Throw yours in." Barb did, and the monster let out another squeal. "Everyone, throw your bath bombs in," Myrtle yelled at the group. They all looked at her as if she had three horns growing out of her head. "Do it if you want to live," Myrtle screamed. "Throw them like you're the sea star and your life is on the line." Those on the deck threw theirs in, and the sea monster dropped two of its tentacles. "Edward, we need more bath bombs." Without hesitation, he ran inside with one of his employees, and moments later rolled out a large cart full of them. Edward, his employees, and many of the guests grabbed the bath bombs and threw them at the monster, as many more guests came outside and threw their bath bombs into the ocean. The sea monster, the garbage kraken, completely let go of the ship and squealed one last time as it died in a bath of fizzy bubbles. The maelstrom ceased, and the ocean frothed with the fragrance of lavender. Chapter 4: The Aftermath. It took a while for the Quetis Dawn to send out an SOS. The garbage kraken generated some sort of energy field when it attacked that messed with electricity, radio, and cell signals. It was the reason her two sister ships never sent out a mayday. The U.S. Navy collected the remains of the garbage kraken. The mutated monster was dissected by scientists who found that plastic and oil pollution contributed to its large size and abilities. The scientists believed the monster was only eating the ship and everything inorganic on it, as a large amount of undigested organic material was found near the anus. Edwards Kraken bath bombs became an international hit and sold over 10 million in the first week after the garbage Kraken story broke. Barb went on to create the environmental cleanup organization named Clean It Up, with Edwards' sponsorship. Her 100 chapters of the Clean It Up Club have tackled the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Myrtle started a not-for-profit daycare and work program for mothers and or fathers in need of a better education and or a job placement. Her organization provided free of charge daycare and schooling. Scientists continued the study of the garbage kraken and wondered if there were more like them out there or other similar mutated monsters. As our world continued to change, who could say? The end. Thank you for listening to my audiobook. Appreciate it. If you'd like to leave any comments or questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And just a reminder, you can help out with this project by purchasing the ebook. You can buy the ebook from Amazon, Google, Apple, Kobo, or Barnes & Noble. And you can also buy merchandise related to the story from Redbubble. You can find links to the ebooks to your favorite store and a link to the merchandise page in the description.